Now then, Donald Trump's brand new running mate, J.D. Vance, who, of course, could be the US Vice President in less than 6 months, and almost certainly will be, has taken a swipe at our government. He says that the UK could be, and I'm quoting him here, the first Islamist country to get a nuclear weapon under Labour, maybe ahead of Iran. Was he joking? Let's have a little listen to what he said.
What is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
Well, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
This is the man who Donald Trump has just made his vice president, kind of your equivalent. All the polls say that he is going to win. How do you feel about him talking about your government like that?
Well, I think he said quite a lot of fruity things in the past as well. Look, I don't recognise that characterisation. I'm very proud of the election success that Labour had recently. We won votes across all different communities across the whole of the country, and we're interested in governing on behalf of Britain and also working with our international allies. So I look forward to that meeting if that is the result, and it's up to the American people to decide.
And you're supposed to be in the honeymoon period, aren't you now? So we should say congratulations. I don't think you've spoken on Good Morning Britain since that win. But you yourself have been very critical of Donald Trump as well. Keir Starmer has to spend a big time getting to know John Biden, a seemingly relatively successful visit. Then all of a sudden, he's making that call against his advisor's advice, who said should just drop a note, which seemed to go down well. You're in a very different position now, aren't you, navigating your personal feelings about leaders around the world and what is required for the government?
Well, look, I think, political leaders across the world all have different opinions, but we govern in the interests of our countries, and the US is a key ally of ours, and if the American people decide who their president and vice president is, then we will work with them. Of course we will, and I'm sure they'll have opinions on what we do and suggest, and we'll work together constructively. And I look forward to those meetings and being able to do that. That's grown-up politics. That's what we do, and I think things are. It's up to the American people, like I say, who they want to decide who their next president and vice president is, and we'll work with them constructively.
There's a big difference, isn't there, with what you can get away with saying when you're in opposition and when you're in actual government?
Well, I think there is a difference between opposition and government. Of course there is. We're acting as His Majesty's government, and that means, exactly what we said when in the run-up to the general election is putting the country first, country before party, and even before ourselves. I'm there to get the best for the British people. That's why we've hit the ground running in terms of announcements we've made in the last 10, 11 days to kickstart our economy and growth, because that's what we desperately need, and we'll work with our allies to achieve that as well.
Well, let's talk about what you're here to talk about this morning.
The devolution revolution.
Yeah,
you want to have a proper conversation with mayors, don't you, about economic growth, potentially even devolve power to raising things like council tax. Is that a clever way to avoid, if you do have to raise council tax, shifting the blame to local leaders?
Well, that's not what the devolution revolution's about. It's about making sure that all parts of the country has growth plans and are injected into that growth. As the Prime Minister set out, he believes people with skin in the game are critical. That's why he met with the mayors recently. And I've wrote out to leaders today to say, come on board. I think, the devolution powers like skills, employment, housing, planning, these things will really kickstart the economy. I've changed the name of the department and put local government back in the name because, levelling up was a sham and a scam, but actually dealing with the entrenched inequalities, making sure that things like Great British Energy and the National Wealth Fund hits all parts of the country is about engaging with those local leaders and asking them to get on board. And I think, you know, making the collaboration, I've been very clear, we've had this competitive nature from culture from the last government where people were bidding for little pots of money here and there. I want to see collaboration and getting the basics right, because many people are frustrated at the moment that their services that they rely on every single day are crumbling. We've seen that in our NHS. We've even seen the crisis that we were left in our prisons. So really tackling the fundamentals will put us on the right path. Now, that doesn't always give you the headline gimmicks and it doesn't give you the instant sugar rush, but it will give us the foundations for our economy's stability into the future.
Are you fundamentally, as the new government, having to harden your hearts about this endless, timeless issue almost of the green belt, building on the green belt, the grey belt, as it's sometimes called as well, which is somewhere between an industrial site and the green belt? Are you fundamentally having to harden your hearts and say, basically, to Britain, we have got a housing shortage, you're going to have to kiss goodbye to some of your precious countryside?
Well, no, we're not saying that. We call it the grey belt for a reason. Some of it is disused car parks. It's not the rolling hills of Surrey that we're planning on building huge houses on. But we've also introduced the mandatory local targets as well, because we're very clear that we need to have the planning reform and we need to have local engagement to build the homes. We have a mandate to build 1.5 million homes during this Parliament. The previous government, to be fair, said they were going to do that, but they bottled it. You know, they gave in and didn't do the work that we need to do. We went to the electorate and said we do need to do this work, and we do see brownfield as crucial, and that should be used first. But also parts of the grey belt, which people wouldn't see it as the green belt if they looked at it, should be part of that. But our golden rules mean that we'll have the social housing and affordable housing as part of those plans as well, because far too often local people say, well, hang on a minute, these executive homes are being built next door to me, the infrastructure isn't there, and, our children will never get the opportunity to live in them.
Yeah, and now talking of hardening hearts, you are very likely to face a rebellion from some of your own MPs about the cap on child benefit, the two-child benefit cap, not lifting that. Everyone seems against it, from charities, from Gordon Brown, from Reform, on all sides. How uncomfortable are you that's not likely to be in the King's speech tomorrow?
Well, look, we said before the general election that we won't make unfunded spending commitments, and we're continuing with that. We've set up a child strategy, and the Prime Minister is clearly leading on that, and that shows you the importance to which the Prime Minister wants to tackle child poverty. We've introduced breakfast clubs in all primary schools, which I think, as a free school meals kid myself...
though, Angela, do you feel like it's not right?
I don't like the situation the previous government has left us in. I mean, we open the bonnet and we're looking at the engine, and it's not a good situation. Within days, we had to deal with a prison crisis. We've seen lots of unfunded spending commitments that have been given out prior to the general election. We saw what that does. They crashed the economy under Liz Truss. The Chancellor will not do unfunded spending commitments, but we've already set out a number of measures, including the New Deal for Working People, Make Work Pay, so that people have more income in their pockets. We'll lift 1 million people instantly with a pay rise under the genuine living wage that we're setting out. So we are taking action, but it's also true to say, and we said it before the election, we can't do everything all at once. No. We have to grow the economy to pay for our public services. And if we'd have grown the economy at the average rate of the OECD countries, we would have over £140 billion more in our economy. And that's nearly £40 billion that we would have had to spend on public services. And that is the real scandal, that we've been left with such a dire inheritance, highest tax burden, lowest growth. And that's why the Chancellor is absolutely focused on making sure we turn that around.
Well, it's interesting, and I wonder how much longer this will carry on for, that you're in that kind of honeymoon period where you can keep blaming the previous government and what you inherited, and every new government does that when they take over. And by past history, we reckon you've got about another 2 months to be able to do that, and then you'll be standing on your own record. But
Good
thank you very much for
to speak to
coming
you this morning.
Thank you.
Well,